Trans Talk Hub podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa, alongside our great co-host here, Braxton.
Hello once again, everybody.
Welcome, welcome. And today we're going to talk about trans sports. There's been a lot of developments, a lot of conversation in regards to this topic. So we're going to talk about it a little bit.
Let's get into it. Let's do it. It's going to be a fun one.
Absolutely. So, of course, obviously there's been a lot of controversy around the Algerian boxer, Imane Khelif, I believe is how you pronounce it. Could be wrong. Someone correct me if I am, but that's how I've heard it. So that's how I'm going to say it. But anyway, everyone's trying to say that, it's a biological man that's competing against women and, she's dominating, it's this whole thing. And I don't know, it's insane. There's been a lot of developments since then. Day one, I don't think anyone actually did any research because I've seen all kinds of people just posting, trans woman competes in Olympics, blah, blah, blah. Like nobody was doing research. And I kind of fell for that at first because that's all I could see too. So it's like, well, let me take a stance on like Facebook or whatever. Because I was like, well, now I will say that I said if this is a trans woman competing, I'm against it. Because I feel like biological women should be fighting biological women, biological males against biological males, et cetera, et cetera. So I was stating my take, and I think I got a lot of respect out of that, regardless of how that conversation is. I think it's good for people to know like where you stand on that. But it was just crazy how nobody was doing research.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not going to say I got into it in the Facebook comments on a post, but I definitely was. I couldn't stay silent about it because it's some kids I went to high school with who, I mean, for the most part have been pretty respectful of me and they're biological men. And just so that, they weren't rude by any means, but very, very much so misinformed and just kind of running with whatever information they got from whatever Facebook page it is that they subscribe to. Right. And I very kindly let them know. I was like, I mean, one, the IOC has released a statement on it. If you think for yourself, you would understand we don't have any actual medical proof for either claim, no actual medical record. I've never been in the same room as this person. So how in the world could we know with the very little information that we had? So it's just crazy to see how quickly things can just light up. And it's really unfortunate that it's so easy to do with the trans topic. I think that's the most frustrating part about everything that's going on with this right now is that it really shows you how easy it's become to weaponize being trans, which for me is frustrating. And I'm sure you would share the same sentiment because it's just who we are. It's you're taking something that we struggle with daily, that we have to live with, that we have to cope with, that's very, very real to us, and you're weaponizing it to pit people against each other. It's truly just devastating to sit back and watch. Like, this woman has trained very hard, clearly. I mean, she's got a masculine build, I'll give people that, but I mean, when you train that hard and you're boxing and your muscles are constantly getting that use, you're probably going to have what is seen as more of a masculine appearance, but that doesn't make you a man. It's the same people that tell trans men like myself, like, it doesn't matter how much testosterone you take, you'll never be a man. But this person's testosterone levels are too high, so now they're a man. Just make it make sense. It doesn't, like, what are y'all arguing? What are y'all arguing? This is so crazy. There's no proof. There's no backing. It makes no sense to get so up in arms over something that you have absolutely, neither side has any proof for. It's crazy. The other thing is that she's competed against other women and been defeated, and nothing's ever been said then. That's crazy. Like, I've been on testosterone 10 years, and my chromosomes have never changed. She's taken this test many times before, never had an issue, and now she does. Chromosomes don't change, right? Like, that's been an argument from the far right side that's complaining about this for a long time. Use your own logic, guys. Like, y'all are just running amok for what? Because you're emotional. Chill down. It's okay. You're gonna be all right. Take a breath.
Yeah, it's kind of frustrating because I think, like, just with any topic, like, I know this isn't sports related, but this kind of segments into what I'm gonna say. I feel like with news that, like, these days when you're a trans person and something really bad happens, like, for example, the whole Trump assassination attempt, I guarantee you, every trans person was hoping, dear God, let it not be a trans person who did that. You know, like any big thing that happens across the world, you're just hoping, like, please let it not be a
Yeah,
trans person,
for real.
because you know it's so much controversy that we don't need. It's crazy.
And what's crazy is this isn't even a trans person, and somehow
Exactly.
we're still getting dragged into it. That's crazy. This person isn't
Absolutely.
even trans, so it doesn't matter what we do.
It
We're
really
just always
doesn't.
going to be the center of these like civil debates for some reason. It's sad.
Yeah, and it's always the trans woman side. You know, like I we talked about it just a tad bit before, but like the trans woman side, it's not really that much of a discussion.
Yeah,
You know, it's more about like femininity and all of those things, like where things kind of land. You know.
yeah, yeah. This whole thing is just, I don't know, disappointing. I think is the best word for it right now. Just on all fronts, it's just incredibly disappointing. It's so crazy to watch this go down, and the fact that it hasn't been squashed yet.
Exactly. Well, I have that video. You were talking about that IOC. I have the video
Mhm.
here, so I guess we can watch that really quick. I do want to preface that at first, it shows the Italian prime minister talking about it and how she felt. You know, because obviously the first person to be defeated by her was an Italian woman.
Right.
So you know, of course, the prime minister has to speak out on it, and then we get into the IOC's take on it. So I'll go ahead and share that here.
Con i livelli di testosterone presenti nel sangue dell'atleta algerina, la gara in partenza non è una gara che non, diciamo, non sembra equa. Io penso che atleti che hanno diciamo, caratteristiche genetiche maschili non debbano essere ammessi alle gare femminili.
The testosterone is not a perfect test. Many women can have testosterone which is in what would be called male levels, and still be women and still compete as women. So this panacea, this idea that suddenly you do one test for testosterone and that sorts everything out, not the case, I'm afraid. But each sport needs to deal with its issues. They know their sports and their disciplines the best, and you need to target and tailor, I should say, the testing and so on with that. But I think we're all agreed, I hope we're all agreed, that we're not calling for people to go back to the bad old days of sex testing, I think, which was a terrible, terrible thing to do. And I'm sure we all agree that that is not the way forward in this situation. This involves real people, and we're talking about real people's lives here. They have competed and they continue to compete in the women's competition. They have lost and they have won against other women throughout over the years. And by the way, this should make this absolutely clear for everyone. This is not a transgender issue. I know you know that, but I think there has been some misreporting on this, and I think it's very, very important to say that this is not a transgender issue. These women have been competing in competitions for many years.
I love that. I'm so glad that he made it a point that this is not a transgender issue. That is not what this is. But the other thing that I realized while watching this is that this whole thing kind of busts open this entire debate in a weird way, especially because they're talking about how women can have male levels of testosterone and they're still women. So that is proving a point on the side of people who say, well, sure, you can present as a man, but you will always be a woman, whatever, and spreading truth to that. But then it's also showing how harmful the far right side can be because of how easy it is for them to just jump on something because it has trans slapped to it. So it shows just how bothered they are just by the trans topic, and that it is deeper than just the being trans thing. And like you had said, we normally see this with trans women. I think the attack is not necessarily on the transness per se. It's more so on the femininity of a person. Women have always been far more under attack than men have ever been, even when you transition. Trans men don't really get, we've talked about this, I don't even know how many times on this show. Trans men don't really get it as harsh as the trans women do, and it's the same as our cis opposites, right? Like it's the exact same thing, and it's crazy because it really shows that we can experience things the same as the other side, once you transition. Not that that has anything to do with this argument, but I just think it's interesting that this whole thing is just like, it kind of does encompass a lot of what the whole debate has been over the last few years, and this huge dumpster fire we've been trying to put out. This really kind of, for me, reins it in. I know it's not going to as a whole, unfortunately. I wish it would, but again, I'm really glad that he made a point. This is not a trans issue, because it's very easy to just hop on that and believe that it has something to do with being trans, and it doesn't. And he made the same points I did. Like, she's been defeated by women plenty of times before, passed these tests plenty of times before. The tests are not perfect. Of course they're not perfect. Nothing in this world's perfect. So it's so crazy how we're so quick to just speak in absolutes on things that we don't actually fully understand.
Yeah, 100%. And well, I wanted to choose that video just because of that, because I knew that, he directly stated that it was not a transgender case. And I think that people ought to know that that's coming from the IOC spokesperson,
Right.
that's the case. And, one thing I want to dive into, and I know this has been mentioned, and I think you know my takes on a lot of things. I'm not one to be throwing out the term transphobia very
Sure.
often or lightly, but I want to mention that we did get to see, based on some people's posts, their transphobia come out. We definitely did see it on
Absolutely.
some Twitter posts or X posts, depending on how you still want to call it. But regardless, we did see some forms of transphobia within that. And I do want to state that transphobia can affect, like, women.
Yep.
Women, like biological women, can be affected by transphobia. We
Yeah, I
see
mean, it
it.
happens all the time.
Yeah,
It's
and this was a
constantly
big
happening.
case, because she was being called a man and all of this, whatever. Your transphobia is affecting cis women.
Yep. People that it doesn't even pertain to. And that's why, to me, it's just such a silly thing to engage in, because it's so easy to make an ass of yourself while practicing that. I understand not necessarily agreeing with every last trans person's decisions. I don't agree with every last trans person's decisions. Clearly, I think we all know that at this point. But I'm not transphobic. I still think that, yeah, that's the life they want to live. I've got opinions, but it doesn't matter. That's their life to live. It's just crazy that people can't just set that to the side and just grow up a little bit. Like, most of these people that you see sharing this stuff are like old dudes, like really old dudes. That's all I see on Facebook sharing this stuff, and they are so misinformed. Mind you, old dudes is what we allow to run our country, and this is the type of behavior that comes from them, and it's so consistent. It's crazy, man. I don't know. This whole thing has been very, very telling, and it's, if you got yourself caught up in it, it's unfortunate for you, because now you look like an idiot. That sucks.
Absolutely. I deleted my post on Facebook only just because, I found out it was inaccurate, and I
Hmm.
took it down. But, for me, I was just stating my stance. I didn't want to be like, oh, I kept hearing all these people talk about, like,
Right.
trans women in sports. And I'm like, well, maybe they should hear from an actual trans woman that
Right.
disagrees
Right.
with that. You know what I mean? Like,
And I think that's the difference there, though, is that I was the same way when this first came out. The very first thing I heard about it, my little notification pops up from whatever app it is that I'm subscribed to, and it kind of said what was going on. And at this point, you have seen it happen several times, so I wasn't necessarily surprised to see it. But in the beginning, I was like, yeah, of course, a man shouldn't be competing in boxing with a woman, And even as you had said, your post stated, if this is a man, no, I don't agree. But we still allowed that space and that time for more information to come out before we just jumped. There was absolutely nothing to indicate at that point that this was real, except for a headline I happened to see. And I think you and I both are the same in that regard. I never would assume that you would just jump to the conclusion of anything. That's not how we operate. So it's okay to, in the beginning, to have thought, yeah, well, for sure, if this is a man, then they shouldn't. But it's not a man. And as soon as we discovered that, my stance was pretty firm on it at that point. It's not a man. Drop it. Leave it alone. You were wrong. Move on. It's okay. Like, it's just insanity.
yeah, I totally agree with you there. And the bad part about it is that because this happened, it does kind of open the whole trans sports
Sure.
topic. Like I heard people talking about Leah Thomas again, and that's been over with. Like she is not going to be able to compete with biological women in swimming. Like that's already
Right.
been settled, but yet they want to talk
Right.
about that again because
Correct.
the topic's been
It fuels
reignited.
their fire.
Exactly.
That's all they're looking for, and it's so evident that you're just looking for gas to toss on the fire. That's it. You don't care about facts. You don't care about it. What, like, is there any intelligence left out there? Like, like cue the little Buzz Lightyear meme. It's just, I don't know. This shit's insane. It's crazy. Think for yourself, people. Like, how many times do you have to make an ass of yourself to realize, maybe I shouldn't just believe everything that I read on Facebook from my Aunt Peggy out in Tennessee? Like, come on now. Use your noggins, people.
Absolutely. The thing is like I know before, like a lot of people would always say, like, well, why isn't there like a trans sports league or whatever? I used to be like against that whole thing, but at this point, I mean, I honestly feel like that's maybe what needs to be done because that'll solve the whole
Yeah,
like it'll solve the whole issue because Leah Thomas will finally have somewhere to compete. It could be this big thing, and you could gain all kinds of money if you decided to run it.
that's what I'm saying.
Hell, I might
I
even
think it'd be
start it and run
cool,
it.
right? Like, why not? We're already trying to do a whole bunch of other crazy stuff. Why not? We're gonna start a trans league if you are interested. Link in the bio.
Absolutely. Like, let's just solve the like no more discussions. And if anything, I feel like something like that could be the best for everybody because I
Yeah,
guarantee that these other like sports organizations would love to quit talking about trans issues so they could just focus on the sport and the sport
yep,
itself. Now,
yep,
I mean, sure, places like ESPN and things like that, now they would have to talk about like, wow, there's this trans league and
right,
these people are competing or whatever, but it's like there wouldn't be an issue of like, oh, there's this potential
right.
trans woman or there is this trans
Correct.
woman competing in this sport. No, because there would already be the trans competitive sports league,
Exactly.
where all of these different sports take place. You could start in the
Yep.
US, then you could broaden to Canada and the UK and all of these things. And a lot of people probably think like, well, if you're 2% of the population, then how are you going to do that? Well, if you're talking about the whole United States, that's a lot of people that you
Exactly.
could get together to compete. So it's like I almost at this point just want to like put something together and launch it ourselves.
I'm
Because
saying, and
like
it's like
clearly,
the trans athletes also deserve for their athleticism to be the main focus of them going to an athletic event. Because at this point, that you're training so hard for the only spectacle, the only thing that people really care about is your gender identity. And you put in all this work to train. Wouldn't you want a space where your athleticism is the focus and nobody gives a shit that you're trans? Right? Like, I think that's what confuses me about the whole thing in general is that we're constantly, I say we, not we, but the community is trying to impede on other spaces that already exist when you could just be the bigger person and just go make your own shit and be like, fuck you guys, I'm doing my own thing. Like, that has so much more of an impact than the screaming and crying and going to TikTok and being so butthurt because somebody misgendered you. There's so much more that you could be doing with your time. It's just, I think that would be awesome. I think it'd be I don't even care about sports. I could not care less about sports, to be completely honest with you. Like, I'll get into it. I'll go to the bar with my buddy or something, and we'll drink some beers and I'll cheer and stuff because everyone else is cheering and there's my cue. But I would be down for that. I would watch that. I think that'd be really cool, and it's inclusive, and it is something that gets to represent trans people as a whole. And I don't know. I don't know why it's not a thing. I don't know why we're so against it. Like you said, the argument of there not being enough trans people, where clearly there is for it to be an issue. Clearly, there's enough athletes that are also trans. We see about it in the headlines. How often? Enough. Like, there's enough of us. We could make it happen. What do you call that? What do you call the trans the trans athletic committee?
well, I think honestly at this point you could just call it exactly like I called it earlier, trans competitive sports league. What would that be?
Yeah,
Like the TCSL? That kind of
Yeah.
sounds kind of cool,
TCSL.
honestly.
All right, who wants to be part of the TCSL? Let's go. This shit sounds
Exactly.
official. I like it.
Honestly,
I want to
I
be like
mean,
Mark Cuban. I just want to own a team of.
exactly. Well, we
I
would
was gonna
own
say
the
another
whole
word. I'm not gonna say it.
organization, like bigger than owning a team, you own no organization.
Exactly. Oh my god, I
It would
love it.
be a big money thing too. And it's like, I don't understand why somebody hasn't invested in this. It would be a huge investment. You would rent these different stadiums
Yep.
and bring these people on. It would create jobs, which would be good for the
We love
economy.
jobs. We
We
love
love
jobs in
jobs.
America.
Yeah. We want to boost the economy. We're creating jobs. We're doing all these things. Like,
I'm
it
here
could
for
be
it.
this.
I'm sold.
Absolutely. And the thing about it is, like you said, you would think that those trans athletes that exist out there who are interested in sports would want to be recognized for their sport. And
Exactly.
there's all kinds of sports that you could do for that kind of thing as well. We're talking like soccer, like a lot of. I guarantee that there's other sports that probably don't get like very much attention either that could work really well on the trans end. Like, volleyball could be a good one. I'm sure
Bro, I
there's
want
trans
a
women who would
whole
want to compete in
football league.
volleyball.
I want a whole
Yeah,
football league of trans men.
that could be cool.
That sounds sick. What are you talking? I would finally give a shit about football.
That would
That'd
be
be so
awesome.
cool.
We would be the one to headline it.
I'll go out there sing the Star Spangled Banner and shit. I can see it
Absolutely.
now. It's just coming to life in my little imagination here. I love it.
Yeah, I think it could be so big, and I only bring it up because it's like, what it to me at this point, I think it only makes sense because I feel like
Yeah.
that there's going to be more. This isn't the last issue about trans women or trans
No.
men like going against like their own, like the opposite side of their
Right.
their biology on the sports side of things. So it's like, I'm just so tired of that conversation. I'm ready to like end that whole thing by contributing to a fix.
Yep.
Like, even if I'm not the one who puts it together, it's like, if somebody puts it together, I will support it all the way to the end in any
For
way that
sure.
I can, because it's like, it's the fix. And I don't know, like I said, it takes the pressure off of these other organizations who are probably really tired of talking about it
Very much so.
and probably don't want to talk about it because maybe they're against it or whatever. But
Yep. And aren't we tired of hearing it, honestly?
I
I
am.
am
Yeah,
I am so over it. I'm so over it. I don't want to hear about it anymore. I don't care. I don't give a shit. At this point, I'm like, just let whoever play with whoever. Honestly, I just don't even care. Like, obviously, that's not the case. I do give a shit about that, but it's just so overplayed, overdone. Aren't all the people that are getting so emotional about this on the trans side of things? Aren't y'all tired of hearing it? Surely you are. Clearly you are. Which I'm not saying there's not something to be upset about, but we can't fix it, you know? Both sides kind of have points here and there, you know? I'll give it to you. Whereas on the trans side of things, I can understand how being made to play in a league with people who align with your biological sex would be very uncomfortable. And you've also worked very hard to, achieve your athletic status or whatever it might be. I get that. But on the flip side, there are still biological advantages. So you can't make anybody happy unless we just split this shit up, give the trans people their league, give the cis people their league, coexist. If within that league, if there are certain groups that want to then combine the leagues and do something along those lines, knowingly so, maybe it'll open up the gates for something like that to happen because we're already separated. You know what I mean? Like, there's no like, oh, you're trying to infiltrate, you're trying to be sneaky. It's like, we're just our own things and now we're coming to get, I don't know, maybe I'm just ranting at this point, but I think it'd be a great idea. I think the trans people just need their own thing. I think we've gotten so far away from celebrating the fact that we truly are just something different. We are an anomaly, and that's okay. And I'm ready to get to a point where we just embrace the shit out of that. I think it's cool that I have a completely different perspective than most of those people around me. Even my best friends, or my mom, or my partner. I have a completely different perspective than all of them. That's fucking cool. That's awesome. I like being special. And I am special, goddammit.
Absolutely. And I don't understand either why we can't like just be happy with that. So,
Yeah.
you got those people who are like, no, I'm a woman. I'm this, I'm that. It's
Mhm.
like you can be. Like it's just like you're not gonna change your biology, like
Yep.
I don't know. It's like a whole thing because it's like I see there's nothing more that upsets me than seeing, like we talk about TikTok here and there because, both you and I we are on TikTok every once in a
Sure.
while. There's nothing more that I hate than seeing those lives where it's like trans women or biological women. And I'm like, you guys are rage baiting and creating so much more like issues than you recognize, or maybe you do
Yep.
recognize it and you just
Yep.
don't care. It's like at that point you're not even like a supporter of your own community.
The one I see a lot of is the title says trans women are better at being biological women. And every single time the fallback whenever you get up there to say something, anybody will join the panel and be like, well, I don't agree with you, and they will be like, oh well, you just misunderstood the prompt. All I'm saying is that trans women are better at being biological women than they are biological men. I'm like, okay, then why didn't you put that in the prompt? You know exactly what you're doing, and it's exactly that. You're rage baiting, you're pissing people off. I think the thing that people forget when they do stuff like that is that there are those few people that only click in there for a couple seconds and then they're gone. And now they are left with the belief that there are people out there, lots of people, that genuinely believe that a trans woman can be a biological woman when that's just not inherently true. You yourself are also driving the divide, causing the hate towards yourself, towards your trans brothers and sisters that you claim to be so fond of, right? Like it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's so crazy to me, man. I don't know. I don't know. It's sad.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's like, why can't we just accept our differences?
Yeah.
It's kind of cool in a way that we can say like, yeah, I mean, I've seen both sides of the equation.
Yep.
We talked a little bit about it, like on, I think it was not was it the last or the previous podcast? I'm not sure, but like where I was talking about, like right now it kind of sucks. I can't like just get up and go every morning now, but I
Right.
used to be able to. I used to be able to just wake up out of bed, and just leave, and I can't do that. That was something that was a positive before. I've
Mm-hmm.
learned to deal with it now, and I'm fine with it. I get better and better as time goes,
Right.
and I get a little bit quicker, and it's fine. But I've lived both sides of that now. Like now because I do my makeup before I go anywhere. I do my hair, all of these things. I gained like a new respect for women because I'm like, damn, this takes a lot of work. It's
Yeah.
like it's a shared experience that I can say that I understand. Like I'm sure on your end, there's things that you didn't get to experience before that now you are because you're seeing
Absolutely.
that side of things.
Yep.
Also, society changes. There's a lot of society changes on both ends of the spectrum. Some positives, some negatives, but either way, we actually get to experience those.
Yeah. Very much so. And it's, I don't know, I think it speaks to like you can still accept that you're different. I think once you do and you accept that and you settle into that and you're okay with that, I think that's when you really get to dive into being viewed as the opposite, what you're trying to go for, what the goal is. When I just accepted what it was, I relaxed a little bit and I wasn't trying so hard and I wasn't overthinking my outfit or whatever. I just put on what a dude puts on. I just put on what Braxton wanted to put on. And it happened to be enough, like very rarely am I getting misgendered anymore. And, people could argue that there are feminine traits about me. Of course, I'm a biological female. It's going to happen. Totally okay with that. It is what it is. But for the most part, even if somebody's questioning and I can kind of tell that they're like not sure, always lands on he, always lands on him, always lands on sir. And a lot of it just has to do with the energy that you bring forward. And for me, I really think that came from just accepting the fact that I'm unique and that I'm different and that's okay. And I just own that subconsciously. I'm not even consciously trying to own it anymore. I just do. I don't know how to explain that deeper. I don't know if that's the best explanation. It just one day something just clicks and it all makes sense. and I'm really hoping that everybody else gets there too, because it's nice on this side of things. It really is, and it's a lot more relaxed and a lot more comfortable, and you don't worry so much about what everybody else has to say. But I don't know, maybe maybe one day we'll find a way to just embrace the fact that trans people are different, and that's okay. Because I think we were headed that way at one point in time, and it just kind of all got hijacked and run amok, and here we are. Here we are, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it really was. I think we've gotten so far away from that because I could almost remember those type of conversations happening out there
Hmm.
on social media and things like that, and then they just took a complete left turn.
Very much
And
so.
yeah, it's disappointing to see because I think when we like stop looking like outward, about like how other people feel about it on all these things, and we just like focus on ourselves and look within ourselves to progress. I think that's when things start to get a little better.
Very
I,
much
I know
so.
it has for me.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it would bring our whole community back together. I think those people that are so deep in it that would view people like you and I as bad guys to the community. I think if they took a second to realize that, they would probably understand us and where we're coming from a little bit more, and understand that we're not against you. We don't hate you. I'm just really disappointed in the way that you've decided to handle yourself in this situation, because it doesn't have to be that way. You can just accept reality for what it is and live comfortably. And then people just don't really like, I don't know. When you accept it and you just live as who you are, and it's you don't need anybody's validation for it, people just kind of accept that. You just don't give them another choice. Not in the way of saying you're going to accept me, or you're a bigot, you're a transphobe. No, you very silently do it. It's very sneaky, but it's
Yeah,
easy to do.
it's always the ones who are outwardly putting themselves
Hmm.
out there. They got the trans flag somewhere.
Yep.
They like all kinds of those things, and it's like I don't understand why you would want to do that to begin with. Like for me, I want to live my life comfortably, and I want to blend in to society.
Exactly.
I
Assimilate.
don't want to be a target, because we talked about that like definitely for sure on the last podcast. How when you do those things, you become a target
Yep.
nowadays. And I don't want to be a target. I just want to blend in and look, like I want to fit in with every other woman out there. And I'm not going to be able to do that if I've got like a trans flag somewhere, or I'm wearing a trans shirt or
Yep.
something like that. I'm not saying it's not okay to be happy to be trans. Like trans
Sure.
is a unique experience that not everyone gets to live, and it's not something to be like overly excited about. Like nobody should want to be trans, because you can't be trans. You either are or you aren't.
Right.
But the
Right.
thing is that with all of that, if you so happen to meet the qualifications of that and you are trans, I think you can be happy with who you are within like yourself, but to just make everything about you trans
Yep.
is what limits the amount of support that you can get. Because I hear like a lot of people outside the community who are like, I'm not really that against trans people. It seems like every other trans person, that's their whole personality, and that's
Right.
all I know them
Yeah.
for. It's
You hear
like,
that a lot.
what's your favorite color, like what's your favorite food, like tell me something about you so I can actually get to know you.
Right. Yeah, and I don't like you said, I don't think there's anything wrong with being proud. Like, I mean, I've got a tattoo. The whole trans symbol, it's got a damn syringe in it. People always think I'm like a recovering addict or something. I'm not. Um, Not that there's a problem with that either. Let that be known, but that's not what it's for. I got that tattoo when I was in a place where I was kind of struggling to accept the fact that I was trans. I was really upset at being trans, and it made me angry and frustrated and sad, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna wear that symbol as a badge of honor. I'm gonna completely rearrange in my mind what that symbol means, what that stands for. I'm gonna be proud of who I am, so I'm all for it, but I didn't go get a whole trans sleeve, or I'm not wearing the flag around my neck, which also is totally fine. But when that is everything about you, yeah, that's dangerous. That's dangerous.
Yeah, it gets a little excessive. Like even for me, Like I see it and I just kind of cringe. I'm just
Yeah,
like, I mean, you just outed yourself. Now I know, and
right.
it's like,
That means everybody else probably knows because everybody knows what
exactly,
trans is nowadays. You got to look out for the big bad trans, you know?
exactly. So I'm hoping more people can like understand that you can still be happy with who you are without doing all of that.
Exactly.
Um, I mean, sure, we do a podcast about trans issues, but it's like we're also trying to change the view on things within the community. Like we're
Right.
trying to get the people who may not be able to currently understand it. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I think we've shared before, like we used to have those views. We used to feel that way very early on, but it's like then you start to wake up. You start
Yep.
to realize, wait a minute, and I think that's really what we try to do at the end of the day is just
Yep.
maybe give someone a different like look on the situation, and then eventually you'll realize that wait a minute, this other stuff isn't really benefiting us. You talk about like, oh well, we should do this, do that for the community, and well, take a second and realize that you guys are really actually hurting the community.
Yep. Exactly.
But yeah, I think ultimately, with the whole Olympics thing, I think it's a whole big mess. Like right now, like I see more and more posts like as the days go on. Like
Hmm.
I mean, I was on Twitter earlier today, and I still see people talking about it's that apparently I guess there was some IO like I guess previous IOC person or something who were
I think it's
saying like, oh, you
the
need to listen to
IBA.
me, something like that. And they were like talking about how like, oh, you should listen to me because I actually have the real source on how this is like a biological male. And it's like, I think people at this point have stated what their thoughts were on it. I think at this point we just let it be. Like, if you're a increase in testosterone, at the end of the day, you're still a biological woman. You should
Yep.
be able to compete with biological women. If you're a
Yep.
biological male, you should be able to compete with biological males, and there's no like in between on any of that. And like I think we spoke on it. So if anyone's curious on our thoughts, it's like, yeah, no, trans women shouldn't compete with biological women and vice
Correct.
versa. I think it
Yep.
goes both ways. And I think it's something that is completely over talked about and doesn't need to be talked about. We shared what the solution is. If anyone wants to do it, then more like go ahead and do it. Like I'll if there needs to be some campaign, I'll back it, or maybe we
Absolutely.
put it forward. Who knows? But still, I think at this point something needs to be done so we can stop having this conversation about transports. I think also, and I've been in a few of your lives before, I know this is a big conversation because even before all of this, in your lives, people ask you like, "Hey, Braxton, how do you feel about like trans people in
Oh yeah.
sports?" And it's like,
Yep.
isn't that a question that is so frustrating when you're holding like a live and you're actually wanting to talk about like some sort of like
Very much so.
progression, or like building to a certain like talking point, and then somebody comes in and brings up something like
And it
sports.
derails everything and everybody loses their mind. It's definitely one of my like top FAQs for sure. And it is annoying because I don't care. It's the same to me as when people bring up the bathroom debate. I am so over the bathroom debate and the sports debate and all of that shit. Like I'm so tired of it because for me, when you're asking me for my opinion based on how I live my life, I'm just going to the bathroom to use the bathroom and to wash my hands and to leave. That is my whole plan of action whilst in the bathroom. Sports, I don't care. I think it's silly that we idolize sports as much as we do. I completely understand the importance of teamwork and how athleticism can be very good and beneficial for a person and their psyche and their discipline and all of that. But the way we glamorize it, I think, is absolutely insane. I think it is crazy that athletes make as much money as they make, truth be told. So I just don't care. I think that for y'all to think that sports are the most important thing, it's just crazy to me. So I don't know. It's not my favorite debate to have. Like I said, of course, I think that there are advantages and disadvantages depending on what side of the fence you fall on. But at the end of the day, it's sports. I don't care. There's so much more shit we could be worried about. There are people dying. There are people that don't have food to eat. You know. There are people that are addicted to all sorts of substances that are being pushed by our pharmaceutical companies. Like there's so much other stuff that we could get into that is far more important. And like you said, of course we talk on the trans topics because we are trans, we have a leg in that race, and a lot of the times it affects us. But I would love to just be able to just talk about other stuff, and not have to worry about making sure my voice is heard so that they don't try to actually come for trans people, because that does affect us. So it would be really nice to lay a bunch of this to rest and for everybody to just mind their own damn business, truth be told.
It really would be nice to get to a level like what you're talking about, where not everything has to be about it, because we're on a much more neutral level with all of those things, and we
Hmm.
can just have conversations on what truly matters, like what is actually affecting the world outside of the trans thing. So, but until that happens, unfortunately, we have to have these discussions.
Exactly. And we will continue. So can't let you guys down. God, I can't speak.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to say, for anyone that's listening, watching, however you're consuming this content, I definitely would like to hear from you in the comments, your takes on the situation.
Please.
Let us know if we should be the ones to kind of lead this trans sports league. I'd be down to do it. Um, Sound off in the comments. Definitely feel free to like, subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you're on Spotify, feel free to rate us. We could definitely use as much support as possible as we try to grow this show into much bigger. I think week in and week out, we're always trying to figure out, what is the latest topic. What is something that would entertain the people who are watching and also be good education at the same time. So also, if any of you have any suggestions, things you'd like us to speak on, definitely let us know. I know for me, I've definitely been wanting to do a live podcast for the longest time.
Very much so.
So I'd like to see if there is that market for that, for YouTube or Spotify, either one. So if you're definitely interested in that, leave a comment and let us know. And we'll definitely respond back to you. I've been trying to keep a good eye on all
Yeah.
the comments
We try.
and respond to them as quickly as possible. But I think that's pretty much the it on this one. I mean, it's not like a super long topic, but I think it's important to talk about since it's such this big thing right now. This past, I don't know, week or so. Just kind of wanted to come on here and share my thoughts, and have your thoughts as well on everything. But for everyone watching, hope you all have a great day and see you all next week.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Bye.